Angel Witch from London, England was formed in 1978 out of a band previously called Lucifer, featuring Kevin Heybourne on vocals and lead guitar and Rob Downing on rhythm guitar. They'd eventually be joined by bassist Kevin Skids Riddles and Dave Hogg on drums. Rob would leave early on, however, and Angel Witch quickly became a trio. In February of 1980, Angel Witch would gain notoriety after an appearance on the Metal for Mothers compilation with the track Baphomet. It has a Black Sabbath heaviness to it, with simple but energetic riffing, followed by some great guitar work by Kevin through the second half. As part of the deal for the compilation album, Angel Witch also had an option for a single with EMI, and 3 months later, they'd release Sweet Danger.
Sweet Danger, Sweet Danger, Sweet Danger, Sweet Danger.
There's a 2-track version of the single and a 3-track version that includes the very Led Zeppelin-ish Hades Paradise, which is delightfully misspelled on the record label. But the highlight here for me is Flight 19.
We come from space in an alien ship. There's no escape. We have jumped in. The powers they use are too much friends for us. We're immune to victims, and we're in chains.
Especially when it comes to the solo. The single performed poorly, showing up on the UK charts for 1 week at the very last position, number 75. This may have been part of what led Angel Witch to decide to step away from EMI, who'd also offered them a deal for a full-length album. In a 2018 interview, drummer Dave Hogg said, "EMI offered a deal which I would have gladly accepted. Our manager Ken Heybourne thought he'd get a better deal from an independent company. Consequently, EMI's deal was offered to Iron Maiden. However, in an interview from 2020, Kevin said, I didn't want to do it, mainly because Maiden had already been signed. The other guys in the band really wanted to do it, but our manager said, do you really want to be under the shadow of a band that have already made it? Maiden got a big deal, so he walked away from that. I don't regret it. You can't go back and change it." But regardless of who got signed first, I think the major difference here was management. Iron Maiden had experienced management behind them, and their first record contract was particularly well negotiated to protect the band and their creative freedom. Angel Witch, on the other hand, was being managed by Kevin's father, who likely did not have the music industry knowledge and legal expertise of Rod Smallwood. Ultimately, the independent label Angel Witch signed with was Bronze Records, who released their self-titled debut album in December of 1980.
Nobody else could see you the same way as myself. Fly high and touch the sky, you're the angel I adore. If only you could feel for me that I feel for you. Why do you ignore me, angel? Why can't I go with you? You're an angel witch. You're an angel witch. You're an angel witch. You're an angel witch.
The album kicks off with the title track and instant classic, Angel Witch, a great combo of emotional aggression and melody.
Walk through the forest, I can put you there. Why do you run away? I never hurt you. I never hurt you. That'd be the last thing that I do.
Plus, the chorus is impossible to not sing along with, regardless of your level of inebriation. This entire album is full of heavy, catchy, melodic metal tracks, including a couple more straightforward upbeat rockers like Gorgon and Confused.
Confused. Confused. Confused. Can you see that? Confused.
But there are also tracks that build more of a proggy atmosphere with dark fantasy lyrics.
It's falling, the final bell is tolling. The world is at its end, to wait for the dentist to rise. The dentist to rise. The dentist to rise.
And then there's Angel of Death, which is still destructively heavy even today, with a crushing bass line from Skids. And a nice melodic lead into a brutal chorus.
Scanning the ocean, searching for victims to taunt. Looking for those that dare, fighting for the ground. Angel of death, angel of death, angel of death.
Honestly, I could call out every single song on here. This album is quintessential new wave of British heavy metal with a raw, punkish energy that still creatively utilizes elements from 70s influences like Black Sabbath and Uriah Heep. Despite releasing an amazing album to highly positive reviews, cracks would start to show in the band shortly after, when drummer Dave Hogg was let go. He'd be replaced by Dave DeFort to join the band in recording their follow-up single, Loser, which seemed to be specifically geared towards radio airplay.
It's a 3-track single. It's like an EP. The main A-side is a track called Loser, which hopefully is going to all make us stinking rich and famous. Probably won't. This is probably the most commercial thing you'll ever hear from Angel Witch. Still a bit of a headbanger. This is called Loser.
Commercial perhaps, but it's still a great track, although it didn't sell as well as the band had hoped, which is really too bad because the instrumental B-side, Dr. Phibes, is freaking epic. The bass here again is just insanely heavy and gives the track a really unique feel. so, Kevin was still unhappy with what he perceived to be the band's lighter direction. The sound was losing its balls to lighter, weaker material. I was becoming unhappy with this Angel Witch lineup and decided to call it a day. After that, Kevin Riddles and Dave DeFort would go off to form Titan, and Kevin Heybourne would briefly join a band called Deep Machine. However, he'd soon put Angel Witch back together, this time with drummer Ricky Bruce from Deep Machine and bassist Jerry Cunningham.
Now there's no escape now. I'm a prisoner. It's like it's an attack. I can see you in the sun of night. Nowhere to run.
This lineup would break up in 1983, but in 1984, Angel Witch would reform again, with Kevin bringing on bassist Pete Gordelier and Dave Hogg returning on drums. They'd also eventually be joined by Dave Tatum on vocals. Dave asked me to be his drum tech when he gigged, and Kevin was struggling with his voice as he constantly screamed. I would sing at the sound checks just to save his voice for the gig. Then I had a phone call from Kevin asking me if I would like to become the singer in Angel Witch. Of course I accepted. This lineup would record Angel Witch's second album, Screamin' and Bleedin', in 1985. The major difference from the first album is obviously the vocals, and Dave is a good singer, but I think Kevin's more unrefined delivery is a better fit for Angel Witch overall. Still, Dave's voice doesn't bother me at all.
Yourself when you won't face the foe. All you do is hang your head in shame. How can you defend yourself when you're too scared to fight? Looking for someone else to blame. Who's to blame?
Because regardless of who's singing, the riffs and solos are still overall excellent. It's also got a crazy cover, with two topless chicks in a graveyard. The main one looks more like some kind of a Gorgon mixed with a Valkyrie, but I have to assume she's an Angel Witch, or maybe the Angel Witch. For some reason, she's holding a bloody axe and forcing her blonde assistant to look at it. Probably because this is a brutal world, and only those that are willing to face death will survive. Or something like that. Anyway, the biggest drawback to Screamin' and Bleedin' is the rough production. The gut-busting bass is gone, and the guitar tone here can be a little staticky, but that said, it still can't hide the killer riffs.
They tie you up, they tear your heart in two. One day they love, the next they hate you.
So if you can handle the fuzzy production, there's actually a really solid album in here that's worth checking out. Dave Hogg would be let go once again after this album and be replaced by Spencer Holman to record the third Angel Witch album, Frontal Assault, in 1986. This one is fairly similar to Screamin' and Bleedin', and even features the same Angel Witch lady on the cover. She's still got her bloody axe, but despite her best efforts, it looks like the blonde assistant ultimately didn't make it. But this album too has a kinda murky recording quality. Both Screamin' and Bleedin' and Frontal Assault were released by Kilowatt Records, an even smaller label than Bronze, and the production unfortunately brings both albums down a bit.
So this is evil. Everyone is running
Frontal Assault's not quite as strong as Screamin' and Bleedin', but once again, if you can deal with the production, there's still some really good stuff on here that's highlighted by fantastic Kevin Heybourne solos. Kevin would return to vocals after this, and Angel Witch would go back to a three-piece for a bit. Then they'd release a live album in 1990 on Metal Blade Records, simply called Live, which also features one Grant Taco Bell Dennison on rhythm guitar. The live album was recorded at the Troubadour in Los Angeles, California, and somewhere around this time, Kevin decided the band needed to be in the United States. He'd moved there on his own and put together an American version of the band with John Torres on bass, Tom Hunting on drums, and Doug Piercy on rhythm guitar. Unfortunately, issues with Kevin's visa would cause him to get arrested just before their first concert and deported back to the UK, causing Angel Witch to dissolve once again. There'd be a few more live albums released over the next decade, as well as an EP of material recorded by the 1982 lineup put out in 2004. In 2011, Angel Witch would finally return to the studio, this time with bassist Will Palmer and drummer Andy Prestige, to record the fourth Angel Witch album, As Above, So Below. Both the album cover and the music are closer in style to that of the first Angel Witch album, with heavy, catchy riffs and, thankfully, excellent production quality.
Help me as I have to wake up inside. I have to know what there is to hide. Violence, corruption will start here facing.
There's more of a Black Sabbath atmosphere here to me, even more so than on the first album, especially on the first half or so.
Interstellar vibrations encircling us, turning our brains into dust.
But then it's always contrasted with soaring guitar work from Kevin. And of course, having him back on lead vocals is a welcome change too.
In the dawn, under the spell of the death spawn, and they are lasting for my blood. I awake, and all surrounding me.
The whole album is really solid, although it's a bit of a slow burn in my opinion, as it doesn't quite reach the level of that first album melody-wise. But still, very good overall, and it ends super strong with one of my favorites off this album, Brainwashed.
To wear a symbol, to what made the pain, to what made the death. Look into your own eyes. Your reflection shows your brain lost.
There'd be a few more member changes after this, but by 2016, Jimmy Martin would be on rhythm guitar, and Friedrich Janssen would be on drums. Along with Kevin and Will, this lineup would put out the most recent Angel Witch album, Angel of Light, in 2019. This one is pretty similar in feel to As Above, So Below, but a little more uneven in my opinion. It still has plenty of really good stuff on it though, like the opening song, Don't Turn Your Back.
Turn your
And this album also features Angel Witch's first and so far only music video for Death from Andromeda. It's set in outer space, where a CM Punk looking astronaut has been taken prisoner by a pair of aliens that look like they came right out of a classic Doctor Who episode. After making the astronaut put on some kind of helmet, the guy alien types some commands into his intergalactic speak and spell, and they start running tests. Stuff like putting him in a room that fills up with gas, or forcing him to reach into some mysterious metal hole and get his hand bit by a dinosaur puppet. Eventually, though, the aliens force the astronaut to watch some Angel Witch rehearsal footage. The aliens give the astronaut some headphones so he can listen along, but apparently Angel Witch's badass riffs are too powerful for the alien technology, and the ship starts to explode. And so does the astronaut's head, which is probably for the best since the ship then blows up completely. As for the rest of the album, it sounds amazing, and like the previous album, it grew on me over time. But I'd also say less stood out to me overall on this one. However, I know there are people who feel the exact opposite, so I'd still say give it a try. Angel Witch is still active today, and hopefully there will be more albums to come. But for now, here's your homework. Angel Witch from 1980 is obviously an essential metal album, and I'd put it right up there with the first two Iron Maiden albums. My other main one would be As Above, So Below, but I'll also put Angel of Light on here because it is really solid overall with cool guitar passages. Plus, those three album covers look great together. And again, both Screamin' and Bleedin' and Frontal Assault are good albums with below average production quality. I'd say give them a shot. I hope you enjoyed checking out Angel Witch and the many ups and downs along the way. It really makes you wonder what their 80s albums would have been like if they'd taken off the way they should have. But still, now's as good a time as any to rediscover them and the excellent guitar stylings of Kevin Heybourne. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.
Thank you, good night.